Good day. I can still say good morning, but more importantly, welcome to everybody. Each of you, in your own way, really care about the future of Charleston. As I often use the term, you're in the arena, and this is going to be an opportunity to speak up and maybe shape the future of this wonderful town. Libby's in my adopted city. I want to, before I go on, I'm not going to be very long, so you don't have to worry, but I do want to throw a bouquet at Dana Beach and also Steve Dopp and his team here at the hotel. I think they deserve a round of applause. I would like to ask the candidates for mayor and anybody who wants to be a candidate for mayor to stand up. I think they deserve an applause. Very good. I have requested that each of my 4 sons learn that wonderful Teddy Roosevelt quote, and I hope I've memorized it properly myself. And I have a copy for any of the candidates who would like a copy. I think they're all here. Almost all of them are here. Anyway, it goes like this. The credit belongs to the man or woman, he didn't say woman, who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, if he wins, knows the thrill of high achievement, and if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place or her place will never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Thank you for being here. This is our moderator. I can't be heard.
It's okay. It's okay. So welcome to A Vision for Charleston. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you, John, for sponsoring today's event. I'm Whitney Powers, and along with Patrick Head, who is there, we are the co-founders of ifyouweremayor.com. As you may know, we recently launched a beta version of our website for Charleston in anticipation of this mayor's race. And our site is really your site. And it is a place that we envisioned for interested citizens, such as yourselves, and civic-minded organizations. I gotta get this. And civic-minded organizations to share ideas, enlist resources for projects and initiatives, and propose innovations to shape our future Charleston as a viable, livable, and sustainable community. We have had more than 1,000 individuals and groups visit the site and our social media, and the vast majority of those interactions have been positive and constructive, and that is the atmosphere we expect for today. If You Were Mayor has been inspired by Mayor Riley's tenure, his mentorship of other mayors, and his vision for Charleston, regardless of how you might consider some of the city's efforts. But we are anxious about the future, as you are, and know that we all have a unique opportunity. The next mayor must fill the shoes of a vastly more experienced leader. We each have witnessed Charleston's growth and vitality, and it has shaped our view of what may come next. And our engagement and our ability to translate our experiences constructively will determine the effectiveness of our next mayor. So this is a point where we can start now. Our program draws from a number of projects and ideas that in fact have been posted at If You Were Mayor, and these certainly reflect the conversations we've all had with our friends, our families, and our neighbors. There are 7 general themes that will be the focus of our speakers today. Each speaker will share some missed opportunities, but more importantly, however, they will each offer a real, tangible possibility for a success that can enhance the quality of life for life in Charleston. First up is Charlie Smith, who is all about West Ashley. And he is here to discuss the opportunities to create community there. Next up, we will have Curt Cavanaugh, who lives and breathes on behalf of people who ride bikes and who walk. And he will discuss ways we can multiply our transportation options through bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Winslow Hasty wants us to capitalize on our investments in the development of such long-range plans as those for mobility, preservation, and tourism management. And he wants to discuss the opportunities that are afforded to us through the actual implementation of those plans. Michelle Mapp is here to promote economic development and will offer some insights into how we can enhance the opportunities for every segment of the population. Malin, I missed it, didn't I? Has been up to his neck in issues related to coastal flooding. I couldn't resist the pun. We have likewise, and this is going to get really bad here, we have likewise found ourselves swimming in comments and ideas related to coastal flooding. So Miles is going to discuss some strategies that are actually finding success in many cities, coastal cities around the globe, mostly in the US, but a touch here and there. With Vince Graham and Steve Dudash, you get a twofer on public transportation. And this too has been a very hot topic on If You Were Mayor. So we look forward to hearing a bit of how we got into our current predicament and a strategy of how it might be in fact resolved. Finally, we have James Island resident Amy Fabry, who will bookend our broad set of aims for Charleston with her insights into some of the concerns and opportunities that exist on James Island. I'm very proud to be part of this effort because I believe we can make a difference when we are engaged in our community. These presentations are meant to only be the point of departure for future conversations. As you listen, I hope that you will not only be inspired, but in fact be empowered to share your ideas with your community. We will have a short time for questions and comments following Amy's presentation. We'll also be collecting ideas that you may write on the forms that are provided on the tables. Please include an email so that we can identify you and follow up. And without further ado, please welcome Charlie Smith.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here at this incredibly important event at a really pivotal time in the history of our city. And it's the proverbial fork in the road, which you're going to be hearing a lot about this morning because that's where we are. We're at a point where we've got to make a big decision about how we move forward as a city and a community. Today I want to talk with you just about my piece of that, which is concerning West Ashley and some of the problems that we face over there, and also how we might pool our resources and move that portion of our city, which has been pretty neglected for a long time, and it shows. We're hoping that we can get West Ashley back up to the standard of the rest of the areas of the city that are doing so well. And I think that the way that I want to do that is to just describe for you what it looks like, what an identity crisis looks like, because that's what West Ashley's going through right now. We all know what an identity crisis looks like in people. It looks kind of like me, but that guy's going to be on a Harley when everybody else is in the minivans. But for communities that are having an identity crisis, it looks a lot like West Ashley. And you see this as soon as you drive into West Ashley from any point of entry into the community. When you drive over the Ashley River Bridge, the first thing you see is a very dated 10-story building, rather nondescript, roadways that are not maintained very well. We now see the remains of a foundation of a building that's been sitting for 20 years falling in empty. And it's just not a very attractive view. Doesn't get a whole lot better until you get down to Wesley Drive, where you begin to have a more cohesive neighborhood look along Savannah Highway. But if you come in from the other way, from Savannah, all it is cars, cars, cars everywhere. When you come up a little further into Savannah Highway, you come into what we refer to as the auto mile, which for me is one of the biggest problems that we have with our community identity, West Ashley. And the reason for that is that the automobile dealerships tend to need lots and lots of land. Well, we need lots and lots of land too for the things that we're going to need going into the future. And it's problematic for us when we see those large tracts of land used up for automobile dealerships instead of being used for things like affordable housing and for mixed-use commercial that is easily accessible to the existing neighborhoods that are already there. And by the way, this trend toward the automobile dealerships has also completely disconnected the communities behind those commercial strips from what were businesses that met our daily needs. That's what all those businesses were along there. When I moved back here in 1996, after having been in Miami for 12 years, there was a Bilo at the end of Betsy Road. There was a Kmart. There was a Little Cricket. There was a Burger King, which eventually became Black Bean, which was one of the rising stars of the restaurants west of the Ashley, and was open less than a year before it was closed down for another automobile dealership. 10 acres of automobile dealerships, by the way. This is what an identity crisis looks like. And the reason is that our community is basically a 50s suburb that is reaching the end of its functional life. Our housing is old and largely obsolete. Our infrastructure is old and somewhat obsolete. And all of this is kind of conspiring against us at one time and bringing us to this point, the fork in the road that we've spoken about. We've been at the fork in the road at least 2 times before. At the end of the Civil War, we had to go from a plantation society to a truck farming, actually sharecropping and then truck farming from about 1870 to 1950. We reached a point where farming was no longer viable. The railroads that had connected all of these communities, and there are probably 20 of them west of the Ashley that don't exist anymore, because when the railroads left, the communities died. The farms left, the communities died. And what was left was a tremendous amount of land and a people who lost their self-sufficiency, because that community used to be very different than what it is now. They were self-sufficient because they were family-owned farms, and everybody knew each other. Their businesses and their money was generated in the West Ashley community, and they were supported by 2 railway systems, the Atlantic Coastline Railway and the Seaboard Airline. And this was not only a way for people to transport their crops to the north, which was the basis of the economy west of the Ashley, it was also a wonderful transportation system that we really kind of took for granted. And when the farms died and the railroads died, all of that disappeared, and suddenly we had people living in a place that weren't connected anymore. And as time has gone on, as I've said earlier, the things that we had that we were able to use for our daily needs, they're all gone too now. So what we've got is a situation where in order to meet your daily needs, you have to get in a car to go somewhere. And I can tell you that west of the Ashley, about the only place to go now is Citadel Mall, and that's not really a popular place right now west of the Ashley. In fact, that's probably the one place west of the Ashley where you will not find cars. Sometimes you can pull up to the building and not know whether it's open or not, and I've done that. I thought Sears had closed. Went up to the door and the door was open, but there wasn't a car in the parking lot. But that's our commercial district really now west of the Ashley. That's all we have, and we need better. So we are at a fork in the road. We have been here before. In 1950, thereabouts, when the farms were gone, the railroads were dying, what we had was an opportunity and a fork in the road. And developers saw that there were a lot of people who had come here during World War II that really liked this place, and they had jobs here, and some of those jobs continued well after the war. So what we had was a lot of people, but we really didn't have room for them. We didn't have places for them to go. So the developers came to that fork in the road, and they seized the opportunity to build a residential community, a bedroom community that was really more of an accessory use to downtown rather than being the self-sufficient community that it had been with its own economy and its own transportation system. So that's where we had to make a choice in 1950. What we have now is this deteriorated infrastructure and housing stock, deteriorated commercial strips, and a place that fewer and fewer people really want to go. And we find ourselves again at a cross in the road, at a fork in the road. We can either continue to allow this community to decline further. We can just let it go and just agree that it's not going to be a place that people want to live, not going to be a place that's going to be useful to the city. Or we can take the opportunity that's in front of us. There was a time when these railroads ran through our community that our communities looked very different. I'm reminded of the story of Wayne Fritz, whose grandfather was a conductor on the Atlantic coastline, and he had glaucoma, and every morning he had to have drops put in his eyes. So when he pulled into the siding at Wapu Road, Wayne and his mother would walk up to the railroad tracks to put drops in his eyes. That's a really connected community. That's how it was then, and people supported the businesses and the businesses supported the people. But that's gone now, and we've got to decide what we're going to do from here. What is our opportunity today to pool our resources between the city and the county, between the organizations and the skill sets that we have at these tables in this room, and most importantly, we need to include the people who live west of the Ashley. This has been a big problem for us. The city's approach has been, over the years, very much a top-down situation, where plans are made and they are announced to the people who live West Ashley what the city is going to do to West Ashley, without asking the people of West Ashley what they need, what they want, and what their concerns are. And what's really inspiring for me at this point in time is that we finally are having forums like this. And it's important because we have to communicate to each other, but it's most important that at this point where we have this great opportunity, that we can choose a better route. We can choose, for instance, to go back to Citadel Mall and say, gee, this is not really working well as it is. Maybe we need to do affordable housing. Maybe we need to do a better transportation system here. Maybe we need to reconnect the neighborhoods to the old community crossroads that were there, because the communities are still there. You just got to know behind which automobile dealership to look. They're still there. So I'm hoping that everybody will realize what path we need to take. It's a good one. There are some wonderful opportunities out there. We're going to hear a lot more about them today. Again, I thank you all for being here, and I'll leave you with this. Brad Meltzer said that history doesn't choose individuals. History chooses everybody, every day. And the only question then is, how long will you ignore the call? I hope everybody here will not ignore the call and come together and help us get our city back to where it needs to be. Thank you all so much. And now I'll turn it over to Curt Cavanaugh.
We don't have a clicker up here, do we? Anybody have the slideshow clicker? Or did it walk away? Because I have some sweet slides. Sure, let's see where we are now. Wait, there's the fork. There's the fork. All right. All right, here we go. Officially good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Charlie, thank you for speaking. Winnie, thank you for the introduction and for having this great event. My name is Curt Cavanaugh. I'm executive director of an organization called Charleston Moves. Charleston Moves, our mission is we're a bicycle pedestrian advocacy organization. But what the hell does that mean, right? It means that we share this radical notion that no one should be maimed or killed using our streets in any way possible. Walking, biking, driving, cartwheeling, whatever. No one should be maimed or killed doing that on our streets. So we look at this photo, and Charleston, you know, we get these great rankings. We assume membership is a world-class city. But which of those streets is world-class? It's not the best photo in the world. The top one, of course, is King Street, Second Sunday. The bottom one, no offense, Charlie, is Highway 17, Savannah Highway. You said 10 acres of... I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Michigan on 60, so 1/6 of that is covered with, you know, geoprisms. Wow, that's unreal. So look at this photo and tell me which one's world class. Which street would you rather walk along? Which would you rather bike along? And for the parents out there, which would you let your child walk along to buy an ice cream cone? I'm going to quote Enrique Peñalosa. Enrique Peñalosa was a visionary in Bogota, Colombia, and he had no money to work with. But he transformed his city because he did this. He prioritized biking, walking, transit over the automobile in his city. And there were pennies there. And to quote him, a city can be friendly to people or it can be friendly to cars, but it can't be both. Well, I'm not saying we're going to go use sledgehammers against cars. I swear we're not going to do that. But we need to consider a radical change from the motorist first or motorist only street to one that allows people and plan that way. But how do we do that? It's a terrible photo from my non-iPhone phone. It was from the Saturday Farmers Market over the summer at Marion Square across the street. But how do we do that? How do we make it safer for people to use our streets in every way, including motorists? Well, we slow motorists down. We slow down vehicles. We convert wide one-way streets to narrow two-way streets. We drop the speed limit in our urban core and our residential neighborhoods from whatever it is to 20. Why is that? If you're struck by a vehicle going 20 miles per hour, you'll live. You don't really want to get struck by a car at all. But if you do, a slow car is better than a fast car. If it's going faster than that, you don't live. It's as simple as that. So we need to consider that. This photo is interesting to me because that little girl is asking, you know, Mommy, why is that late model Buick approaching me when I have the crosswalk, when I have the green light? Well, it's because right turn on red is legal in our pedestrian-heavy downtown. And that little girl is right. She's like, damn it, I just want an ice cream cone, and this guy's going to hit me with his late model Buick. So considering things such as right turn restrictions, right turn on red restrictions, excuse me, in pedestrian-heavy zones, it makes total sense. We already have some of those, but we need more of them. Another thing we can do to make our city safer is bike lanes. I have a British friend who says Americans are afraid of two things: infectious diseases and bike lanes. But the thing is, bike lanes are good for our city. Diseases are not, but bike lanes are. And so let's add them expeditiously, not piecemeal, not study this, study that. Enough of that. Add these things now. They save lives. They're just paint. They're dirt cheap. And We're not going to take away all the road space for cars. Just give us our little sliver. We'll take it. Oh, sorry, that quote. If you want a safer city, build bike lanes. It was a stolen quote from Jeanette Sadik-Khan, the former DOT commissioner in New York City. And it's a pretty simple, straightforward quote, but she did that there very quickly, expeditiously, with a mayor who had her back. So what I'm getting at is, to wrap up, please support our vision for world-class streets and our world-class city. It's not a fiscal issue, it's a political issue. So please support this. Our streets can be better, and then we can all go get an ice cream cone. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Winslow Hasty. I'm the Chief Preservation Officer of the Historic Charleston Foundation. I'm very excited to be here this afternoon, and I probably have the least sexy topic to talk about, or exciting, but it's one that's very important, and it's all about sausage. Okay, Charleston, incredible city. We all know it. That's why we're all here. We have no shortage of vision in this town. We have an extremely engaged citizenry. We have loads of public meetings, workshops, visioning sessions. We make task forces for all kinds of different issues. Very, very important. Planning is extremely important. I'm a planner, and I believe that. And as Charleston is experiencing unprecedented growth across all sectors, including population, tourism, and business, it is incredibly important that we create a vision and a plan for how we want to grow. We have to manage this growth, and managing that will have massive impacts on the livability and character of the city. And I know we've all in this room, since you're all here today, you've all participated in hearings and workshops and perhaps wondered, what happened? What was the end result of that? Where did all those great ideas go? I had incredible ideas. Where are they? Developing a plan is extremely important, but we always say we don't want to see them sitting on the shelf. You always hear that. Oh, we don't want to see them sitting on the shelf gathering dust. They should be living, dynamic documents that are roadmaps for the future and truly influence policy. However, fatigue does set in. You know, you meet and you talk, you get tired, the plan's adopted, and then it kind of sits there. And then you move on to the next issue, because that's what we do. So that's where the sausage comes in. So as a community, we have to make sure that these plans are translated into formal policies, ordinances, and law. That's absolutely extremely important. A plan is only a plan until you make the sausage. It's an incredibly important step that a lot of time gets overlooked. And while no one likes to see sausage being made, we've always heard that adage, right? It's a complex and dirty process. It absolutely has to be done. And we certainly know there's going to be a temptation on the part of any new mayor and any new mayoral administration to sort of flex its muscle and put its fingerprint on policies and priorities for the community. But the reality is we have an incredible slew of great plans out there that are a result of an enormous community investment, community time. We're bringing in outside experts from all over the country and perhaps even the world. And we have to understand that there's a set of community priorities and aspirations embedded in these plans that have already been just sort of teed up for you. They're already there. This is relatively simple, hopefully. And so we just need to focus on making a little sausage. This process will require, though, all of us in this room. It will require a combination of nonprofit advocacy, private sector engagement, and political leadership. Oh, excuse me. More recently, Historic Charleston Foundation has been working with the city and other community partners on several very important plans that should help shape how our city grows and how we manage the change that's inevitably going to come. We've been working on the Tourism Management Plan update. It's incredibly important. We all know that tourism has more than doubled since the last plan was adopted in 1998, and unfortunately, as we were working through this, we realized that really great ideas were put forth in 1998 and they never came to fruition. So we need to make sure that that doesn't happen again. We need to make sure that all these great ideas that came out recently need to be brought to fruition. In the coming months, we will also be working with world-renowned architect and urban planner Andres Duany Historic Charleston Foundation has co-sponsored bringing him to town to help us with the design review process, with the BAR, and really focusing on the quality of new construction for downtown. It's absolutely critical how this city will look and feel in the coming decades is the quality of the architecture that we bring in. And lastly, we also co-sponsored with the City of Charleston bringing in transportation expert Gabe Klein. He's an incredibly smart leader in this world, and he put forth a report that was adopted this fall that has incredible ideas in it about the future of the city, and it touches on a lot of what Curt was talking about and what you're going to hear from some other folks speaking here today. So I'm not going to get into it, but it has huge ideas that are going to require very significant investment from the public sector as well as the private and nonprofits. So here it is, the proverbial fork in the road that we have to have in our presentations. But you know, it's sort of this notion that here we are, we're sort of standing on the precipice. We have a fork, obviously the metaphor works with the new mayoral administration, but also, like, for instance, with the Gabe Klein report, this incredible mobility study that has lots of this input, incredible ideas. We could ignore it and just sort of talk about it and talk about how what a neat idea the streetcar is, or wouldn't transit be great, or bus rapid transit, or whatever it is. We could do that, and what would we end up with is enormous congestion and just more traffic. We all know that that's a serious issue. The other side is we could use what's been laid out there by Gabe and with lots of input from the community and really get excited about the future of this city and how we can shape it moving forward. We really need, I mean, the work has been done. It's sort of teed up, like I said, so we really need to roll up our sleeves and get to work on implementing many of these most important recommendations in the mobility report, but also tourism management in the upcoming Andres Duany report. We also have incredible comprehensive plans and preservation plans. We've got a lot of plans, but they're all, again, a distillation of what this community is aspiring for and wants to do. So I think it's incredibly important, and we can really make a difference by rolling up our sleeves and being a part of the solution. And so I think I want to urge everyone in this room, including the mayoral candidates, that a lot of this work has been done. We really need to start making a little sausage. And the good thing is, there's another slide you'll see some of, is that this has already been done here before, actually, and when it comes to the Gabe Klein piece in particular. As Gabe Klein said, he said, the future of transportation looks amazingly like the past. All we have to do is go back and learn from our roots about what was done. And so, you know, Charleston had a very robust transit system in the early 20th century, with streetcars and ferries and the like. And we just really need to bring them back. So to me, it's relatively simple. We just need to roll up our sleeves and get to work. So we look forward to working with everyone in this room and the broader community and all the candidates and all the nonprofits that are represented here. So thank you very much.
This is the Charleston that we show the world. But beyond this beautiful facade, I would like to introduce you to a little girl and the Charleston that she knows. Meet Jordan. She's 5 years old. She loves anything purple and all things Dora the Explorer. She lives in the Silver Hill neighborhood in Charleston's Neck, a neighborhood that's scattered with dilapidated houses, no easy access to a full-service grocery store, no daycare center or health center, and no local community-based businesses in which her family can buy goods and services. This is Jordan's neighborhood. Ask yourselves, can we be content knowing that Charleston took home Travel and Leisure's top honor for favorite North American city and #2 city in the world due to its inviting hotels, excellent dining, and unique historical attractions Yet 1 in 4 of our children are living in poverty. How is it that the very workers that are the foundation of our tourism-based economy, like Jordan's mom and dad, far too often cannot find an affordable place to live in our city, and we oppose, often through our silence, every attempt to provide them with safe, decent, and affordable housing options? At its essence, these are economic development questions. This is also Jordan's neighborhood. Roughly 300 acres of once industrial riverfront land between the Ashley and Cooper rivers where Charleston and North Charleston meet. Its development will have a long-term impact on the economic prosperity of the city of Charleston and our region, but also on Jordan and her family. It is a unique development opportunity for our community and one we cannot afford to squander if we also care about Jordan's future. But do we have the political will to counter NIMBY? That's not in my backyard. Enact innovative planning and zoning policies, and advocate for both public and private investment to support the development of affordable housing at a magnitude and a scale to meet all of our community's needs. So we are at a fork in the road. What happens to Jordan and her neighborhood? Do we allow for the displacement of her family and gentrification of Charleston's neck, pushing Jordan and her friends out to the furthest fringes of our community and society? Or do we create a place for Jordan to grow up and participate in the new Charleston, in a thriving, sustainable community with affordable housing, access to healthy food and essential services, community businesses, community facilities, exposure to different people, but most importantly, opportunity? We must understand that if we try to separate social, cultural, and environmental development from economic development, it will not work. This is not a new concept. This has already been done before, right here in Charleston. We have proven that housing for our lowest income residents can coexist with housing for our highest income residents. We have proven that when you invest in strengthening the fabric of our community by investing in affordable housing and small businesses that create and sustain wealth for the poorest in our communities, that is not just community development, that is good economic development. Seven Farms Apartments and Seven Farms Village on Daniel Island are a testament to the value of developing beautiful, well-designed, affordable places to live for seniors and teachers and daycare workers and waiters and grocery store clerks within close proximity to where they work. These community assets not only create a sense of place, they create wealth. They create business owners, they create jobs, they empower people to be better, to do better, and to want better. They create a healthy, vibrant, sustainable community. This should be the goal and aim of economic development. The challenge for our next mayor is to ensure that the view behind the facade is as lovely and bright for Jordan as the view of Charleston that we show the world. To do so, our economic development policies must work to strengthen the fabric of our entire community. We must invest in housing and community economic development by supporting high-density, mixed-use development at a magnitude and scale to meet the needs of all of our communities. It might not be a popular stance, but is the right stance. We must do it for Jordan. I am Michelle Mapp. I serve as the Executive Director of the South Carolina Community Loan Fund. If you're interested in helping us move people and places out of poverty, give us a call. Next up, we have Miles.
Thanks, Michelle. That was really, really awesome. My name is Miles Malin. I'm a land use project manager at the Coastal Conservation League. And today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about flooding and some potential solutions for dealing with it here in Charleston. Now, I have to admit that last night, as I was going to bed, I was trying to think of a real clever way to open and kind of break the ice. And then I looked at the weather forecast, 90% chance of rain. And I thought, okay, we're there. I'm gonna really show everybody what this is about. And then I woke up and the sun's just shining down beautifully this morning. But the rain actually came, so hopefully you all probably know already what I'm about to talk about. And that is that all of us here in Charleston are affected by flooding. Unfortunately, days like today with rain and some flooding are not all that uncommon anymore, and there's a reason why. In fact, they're becoming increasingly more common. Sea level in Charleston has risen by more than a foot over the last century, and the number of tidal floods has doubled every 20 years since the 1950s. In 1970, the city averaged 6 tidal floods a year. Today, it averages almost 25. And based on current projections, by the time today's toddlers graduate from high school, just 15 years from now, the city could face a staggering 80 tidal floods per year. 8-0. That's 2.5 months. 2.5 months of businesses having to close, 2.5 months of residents and tourists driving in hazardous conditions, and 2.5 months of kids and adults wading the floodwaters on their way to school and on their way to work. Now, this number does not even necessarily consider rainy days. While overall annual rainfall has not increased by much, the intensity of storms across the entire region has increased dramatically in recent years. So much so that climate scientists are now referring to these rain events as rain bombs because of how quickly these storms can unleash precipitation onto the city. Our city's infrastructure is clearly inadequate. Every time it rains, it floods. Storms inundate and overwhelm the city's low-lying areas and drainage system, and it's easy to understand why. We destroyed our natural defenses centuries ago by filling in wetlands and tidal creeks to make room for development. We instead rely now on an archaic system of pumps and tunnels and walls in an attempt to keep the sea out. Walls, might I add, that are quite literally crumbling in some places like the lower battery pictured here. And while some repair and maintenance projects are underway in the city, it does not change the fact that we are taking a piecemeal, Band-Aid style approach to coastal flooding and climate adaptation. And as we look toward the future, a future filled with rising seas and with stronger and more intense storms and hurricanes, we have a choice. There's a fork in the road. We have 2 paths to choose from. The first path is the path that we're currently on, a reactive path, taking a status quo, piecemeal approach, building more walls and bigger tunnels, and ignoring the warnings of Hugo and of Sandy and of Katrina. Or we can take a completely different path, a proactive path, a path where we take a comprehensive approach to managing changes that are on the way. One where we invest in bold and innovative infrastructure solutions that mimic the natural protections of the marshes and wetlands and tidal creeks destroyed long ago. A path that makes us stronger. A path that makes us a more resilient community in the face of encroaching tides and impending storms. For thousands of years before the first colonists arrived, the peninsula and surrounding coastal landscape retained and stored tidal waters and storm surges from the Atlantic, just like a sponge, and slowly discharged these waters back to the sea as it began to retreat. It's already been done here before. And today, with innovative urban and landscape design and a little help from Mother Nature, we can recreate in Charleston the landscapes that mimic the natural ecosystems of yesteryear, and in the form of linear and coastal parks and other green infrastructure installations. In short, we can turn threat into opportunity. And while I know that all of you are completely shocked that the Coastal Conservation League is promoting nature and green infrastructure as a solution, the fact of the matter is big coastal cities like New York City, like Miami, who've already started implementing bold and innovative strategies and plans, understand that green infrastructure can complement the hard, gray infrastructure that we're currently using. More importantly, it can serve as a civic amenity, an economic stimulant, and a climate adaptation that can ultimately save lives as well as property. One area in Charleston that would be well served by this type of green infrastructure is the Lee Street corridor between East Bay and Meeting Streets in the path of the old Cooper River Bridge. As many of you know, this area is consistently flooded during our highest tides and during storms of almost any size, particularly East Bay Street. Through appropriate urban and landscape design, this 6-block corridor could be transformed from a nondescript, sleepy street edged with turf grass into a state-of-the-art linear park that connects existing historic neighborhoods and protects and enhances them by acting both as a flood control and a recreation space. This much-needed green space would add significant value to waterlogged properties and to the entire community that would benefit from its use. Communities by the Northeast affected by Hurricane Sandy have already started doing this. They've started first by analyzing and understanding their risks and where their vulnerabilities lie. From the analysis, they've developed unique stormwater management and flood control strategies as part of a larger, comprehensive resiliency framework that includes long-term design and policy solutions to update an aging system and to integrate bold new measures aimed at inviting water into the urban landscape so that it can be stored and discharged using nature's blueprint. But we don't need to wait for another hurricane. The time to act is now. I'm pleased to announce that the National Academy of Sciences has chosen Charleston as one of 3 pilot cities in the United States to work with over the next 2 years. Through this partnership, we will have access to some of the best resources and most innovative thinkers when it comes to coastal flooding, climate adaptation, and resiliency. And it is important that we take full advantage of this opportunity to begin taking some real steps forward. In closing, the threats that we face here in Charleston are very real, and they're only getting worse. But we're not in too deep yet. It's critical that we turn the tide now by investing not just in bold and innovative flooding solutions, but in a bold and innovative mayor whose leadership can help us rise above and become the model of coastal resiliency nationwide. Thank you very much.
Afternoon. My name is Vince Graham. I'm the president of the Ion Group, one of those evil developers here in town. The lessons of history can help us understand the present and inform a vision for the future. The 19th century was one of great innovation in transportation: steamships, trains, bicycles, streetcars, subways, automobiles. Innovation in the 20th century has paled in comparison. How did we shift from a human-scale city, that portion of Charleston which inspires postcards, festivals, and provides the city with its internationally recognized brand, to the automobile city, a vision that emerged in the 20th century? The subject interests me because how we build the commons has a profound impact on the life of every individual and society at large. I'm not anti-car, just skeptical of the obsession to prioritize car use over all other transportation modes. This imbalance undermines the quality of urban life. On the streets of 20th century America were multiple modes of transportation: streetcars, bicycles, horse-drawn wagons, pedestrians. The street was an interactive place where vendors could sell things, children could play, and farmers could transport goods. Nothing moved faster than 6 miles per hour. At first, cars were rich man's toys. As they became more affordable, rules were invented to assure they wouldn't undermine equal use. King Street in 1910. Now, World War I started 100 years ago. By its deadly end, leaders pronounced that oil and gas, the blood of war, was also to be the blood of peace. The first federal highway bill had passed during the war, a radical move signaling the government's entry into the infrastructure business. Radical because prior to that time, infrastructure was provided by the private sector or local government. In 1921, Charleston's streetcar system had ridership of over 15 million, triple that of CARTA's ridership last year. Henry Ford deemed traffic congestion the problem of the city. His self-serving solution: abolish the city and leave it behind. With others who stood to benefit, he lobbied government officials to fund operating hardware for his company's products. At the end of 1921, a second bill passed providing 50-50 matching funds for states. Meanwhile, in Europe, the architect Corbusier, whose patron was a car manufacturer, advanced a complementing vision that would generate consumption and resulting employment. The Parisian leadership thought him a kook. Automobile fatalities grew in the U.S. Most involved pedestrians, and most of these children. The enormous casualty rate led to blowback against car use. Memorials were built to children killed in accidents. Recognizing the potential profits at stake if something wasn't done to get these pesky pedestrians and trolleys out of the driver's way, Organized Motordom initiated a successful PR campaign to change the perception of a street. No longer would the street be a place of equal access. The new vision involved reserving most of the street for those who own cars. Political campaigns made appeals to the car's growing popularity, resulting in even greater cronyism at the federal level. With state and federal government assuming control of local infrastructure, private streetcar operators could no longer compete. They closed shop in the late 30s. Ferry operations, doomed by a lack of patronage, also shut down. As with World War I, cars and gas were crucial to the Allied victory in World War II. Managing the war required focus. But leaders still took time to advance the autocentric vision, making plans to accommodate an expected explosion in car use when the GIs came home. It happened. Thomas McDonald, head of the Federal Bureau of Public Roads, identified the problem of prioritizing automobile use, but his warnings came too late to stem momentum. Pressure mounted as cities were overwhelmed. In a 1954 speech, Eisenhower acknowledged that over the preceding half-century, more than 1 million Americans had been killed in car accidents. However, he made clear the federal government's support of building more infrastructure. Over the next 50 years, fatalities would double with more than 2 million Americans killed. 2 years after this speech, a bill was passed launching the greatest public works project in the history of the world. Money flooded into states, making possible radical change to the landscape. Savannah Highway before the bill was passed. The destruction was accepted as a sign of progress. In 1957, the announcement was made that rather than end I-26 at the airport, it would be built into the heart of downtown. 2 years later, more plans were unveiled to speed traffic in and out of downtown. Just as the Berlin Wall was going up amidst Cold War fears, the State Highway Department announced its own barrier, one that would split the Charleston Peninsula, creating blight still with us today. Another headline indicative of the speed-stunted imagination inherent in the autocentric vision, and one announcing what would become one of the deadliest intersections in the city. 4 large projects illustrate the thinking. The massive Lockwood intersections at the Ashley River Bridge and James Allen Connector, the one just mentioned at the Crosstown, and the huge Spaghetti Junction at the foot of the Ravenel Bridge. Together, these projects occupy land equivalent to the area south of Broad Street. Compare this with a 12-acre waterfront park. Viewed objectively, the priorities become clear. Public monies are disproportionately used to advance the autocentric vision. In hindsight, leaders didn't seem to know what they were doing because they didn't know what they were undoing. That with regard to the quality of urban life, they didn't realize their good intentions might be paving a road to auto-dependent hell. We've been under siege by this autocentric vision, but this is beginning to change. Addiction can be tough to admit, but facing it is an important step. Both political parties continue to obsess about oil. They do all within their power to perpetuate the autocentric vision. Just as Ford and Corbu did 90 years ago, our political leadership continues to advocate for autocentric policies. The vision is even advanced by other national leaders. There's a strong tendency to accept the world in which we are presented, thinking there are no other alternatives. Rather than be stuck responding to urban problems with tired, suburban, autocentric thinking, we can choose a new path that pursues strategies that open new doors to a prosperous future. There are dozens of tactics being used around the world to recover the human scale. For perspective, think about the 2-year siege Charleston endured 150 years ago. Within 35 years, despite a great earthquake and hurricanes, the city had been rebuilt. It is possible to embrace a new vision. In fact, in small ways, we're already doing it. Let's embrace the lessons of history, both in what to do and what not to do. Let's learn from the past and build a better future. Thank you for listening. I'm now going to turn it over to Steve Dudash.
Charlie, I think you dropped your notes. Good. Hey, good afternoon. I am Steve Dudash. I'm very honored to be here and be considered for the talk. I'm going to be, which one? This one? We don't have a picture of the fork in the road here, but I think he's seen a lot of forks. I am very honored and excited about being here, and I have an idea that I've been thinking about and talking about for many years. Since 2008, we were talking about transit in this region, ways to alleviate and help with the traffic congestion on I-26. I started working on a project up in the North Charleston area and started looking at ways that public-private partnerships could get together to help in alleviate the congestion. So I'm going to kind of go through these ideas, and then at the end I'll show you some other things. Who knows where this is? Right, San Antonio River. And who knows where this is? That is actually the San Antonio River as well, right next to those beautiful pictures that we just saw. And in 1929, Robert Hugman thought of a better way. He had a better vision for what the San Antonio River could be. I was on a flight over the weekend. One of the attendants, she grabbed a lady's fur coat, and she gave me her phone, and she said, "Take a picture of me." She said, "If you really want something, then you have to take a picture of it and put it on your refrigerator." This is my refrigerator. The upper left picture is a light rail. I believe that's in Brussels. You can see what that looks like and feels like. That's roughly around 50 million a mile is an average number. On the bottom right, does anybody know where that is? Las Vegas. You can see what that vehicle looks like. It doesn't look too much different than the light rail. That vehicle is about $800,000. That's all. The vehicle on the left, relative, that's all. The vehicle on the left is the prototype by that same company. They're made in France. Iris Bus Civis makes those buses. That's what this bus looks like there. That bus is totally electric. It travels around in Bordeaux, France, all in Bordeaux, France, arguably one of the most historic cities in the world. I know that folks in here might argue that, but arguably one of the most historic cities in the world. So if that vehicle can travel all around in Bordeaux, France, I dare say it could travel around here as well and circulate around in the hospital districts, downtown, other areas, and connect up to some of the other outer regions and around the area. Similar to this. The one on the right is Cambridgeshire, England. That's a dedicated guide busway that they have, 2 strips of concrete. Roughly that bus and those 2 strips of concrete are equivalent to about 5 million a mile versus 50 million a mile for light rail or commuter rail or one of the others. So it's a great way to actually create the connections between the municipalities. As I said, you can get off and on. The ultimate question is, how can we get community builders that are around in this area? You read the article, I'm sure, yesterday, I believe it was, about the 75,000 people that are coming to Berkeley County up in the upper area. Up there, there's a lot of growth that's occurring up there, but that we ought to be able to make those connections to there. And we could easily be doing it if they had circulators like this in their own transit towns, which would be high-density core, mixed uses, mixed housing, everything mixed in there. They had these circulators going around that were giving that ability to connect, and possibly you would get out of your automobile, as we've been talking about today as well. They could also get on those guideways, like you just saw. Maybe it connects from Charleston to East Cooper to West Ashley up to, I know it's going to be purple. They were, sorry. Up to Monk's Corner, Somerville. They can make all those connections, and in the middle you'd have North Charleston as well. You could start off with one vehicle, $800,000, like I said. It could be on these guideways. You could incrementally add as you needed to. You wouldn't have to start off with the full light rail system. That most research that I have found shows that it has to be subsidized for many, many years, probably, and it hardly ever makes money. So we've got to figure out how to economically do this as well, and we could start right now. We could start today with this and build. The transit towns that would occur around those, the growth that could occur around those transit towns would be tremendous. It could also help to, well, let me back up. If and when you ever decided, it was decided that light rail actually was the right solution, you'd already have a lot of this infrastructure and things already built. You could easily do it, and probably more economically, I guess. These are some ideas we came up with years ago. Like I said, we started looking at this in 2008, but you could have multimodal guideways like this with these electric vehicles like I was talking about, revitalize areas even along Norfolk Southern Railroad. The Norfolk Southern Railroad is a very wide right-of-way. It exists today. It connects Charleston all the way up to Somerville. They only need 11 foot of track in there, so there's plenty of room to actually do that. This is another place that is, those ideas, and that is along Rivers Avenue. So that'll show you what could happen if you went down the middle of Rivers Avenue. I guess this will go backwards, maybe not. So anyway, in 1889, 116 years ago, Ebenezer Howard contemplated this plan. It's called the Garden City. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but it was a long time ago. You had a major central core. You had municipalities that were surrounding that, and they were all connected by some form of transit. That was 116 years ago. We've been thinking and talking about transit connection to these cores for a very, very long time. Hopefully I found some way to maybe get that implemented and get that started. We formed the Coastal Transit Institute a few years ago to help educate and advocate in the things that I've just discussed. Hopefully we'll get that started, and we'll get something similar to what Whitney has done. The last slide would be, what would we call this? Maybe it's called the STAR. You could have, if you think about the purple lines I was just showing there, you had Charleston at the bottom, East Cooper, West Ashley, Somerville, Monk's Corner, all around in the STAR of North Charleston in the center. It could be called this, or maybe even this. So, thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Amy Fabry. Sorry.
I'm going to end our program this afternoon with this final talk about a family. I'm going to end on a story. And this story is about a dysfunctional family. And in this family, there are 3 adults and a child. The child is James Island, and the 3 adults are the city of Charleston, we'll call Dad, the town of James Island, who is Mom, and then Charleston County, which is the stepdad. All 3, Mom, Dad, and stepdad, have a written plan and a vision for this growing child that is James Island. All three have an interest in how it grows. But there's a lack of trust between the three. There's a lack of cooperation. And a series of fighting and bad decisions have resulted in what is James Island today. So as we know, Mom, the town of James Island, and Dad, the city of Charleston, got a divorce. And they liked it so much they did it several times. And so they don't quite see eye to eye. So when Mom and Stepdad think about their vision for James Island, their child, this is what they think about. They think about a kid that's a little quirky, that's industrious, that's happy, that's beautiful. They think about a kid that's a good steward of the earth. But when City Dad gets a hold of the kid, James Island, this is what happens. This is what City Dad sees for James Island. City Dad calls this a gathering place on Maybank Highway. This is where this is located, currently under construction. So City Dad calls this a gathering place. So we gathered. We gathered in protest because we didn't like the direction the child was being taken. So now we're at the fork in the road. So the question for our new mayor is, where do you go? Where do you take this child? Do you continue the path of dysfunction that we're on, the fighting, the lack of trust, the lack of respect between the three entities that have govern over this child? Or will our new mayor take a different path? Will that mayor say, let's foster a spirit of cooperation. Let's get back trust. Let's communicate. Let's sit down and talk. Because we know what happens when we fight, but we don't know what happens when we trust each other and work together. What if our next mayor, instead of having a wildly unpopular gathering place, had a very popular gathering place? This parcel of property is as you're coming over the connector from downtown towards James Island on Harborview Road. There's a little area, a gateway to our town, you could say. The city has tried repeatedly to zone this for general business. Put a great big 4- or 5-story office building there or something. What if we had a real gathering place? What if our new mayor said, this is my version of a gathering place. We'll call it a paddle park, where you can launch your kayaks, where you can sit and watch the sun set, where you can paddleboard, maybe have a community garden, a farmer's market. There's a novel idea. This is what we think is a gathering place. It's already been done here before. So I thought to myself, and I talked to other people, and I said, can you give me an example where Mom, Dad, and Stepdad all work together to make something positive happen for James Island? Can you remember a project that they worked on together that was successful, that everybody liked for James Island? And nobody could come up with anything. And that's sad. But it's also a huge opportunity for the next person to sit down with the people of James Island, to look forward to the future. We understand that growth is coming, but how that growth is shaped and how the three entities, the three parents can work together, they need to foster they need to have cooperation, foster a relationship of trust that has been missing for years. It hasn't been done here before, but it can be. We need to set aside our differences, and we know that the child is growing, but we want this child to be the best kid possible. Thank you. And now Whitney will wrap up for us.